Hey book lovers, Kaylee here, and welcome back to the Enchanted Library. And today I'm going to be running you through some of my 2021 anticipated releases. Alright, so I have about 19 books on this list, so let's just dive right in and get into it. So we are going to start with January, and on the 12th we have The Brass Queen by Elizabeth Chatsworth. This one is set in 1897, and it says a fiery British aristocrat and an inept US spy search for a stolen invisibility serum that could spark a global war. I'm sorry, but that pair-up sounds amazing. The time sounds amazing, and it's steampunk. I'm sorry. This obviously is going to be on my most anticipated because it has so much that I look for. Next up on the 19th we have Enjoy the View by Sarah Morgenthaler. Now this is book number 3 in the Moose Springs, Alaska series, and I have so much fun with these books. I will say they do run a little bit long, and they do have a lot of plot, but I enjoy them so much. So we have Easton, who is sort of like this rough Alaskan trail man, and we have a starlet, like a Hollywood starlet, coming to Moose Springs, and their paths cross with craziness happening on the mountainside, and that's all I need to know. I'm very excited. I love these characters. I love this setting. I will read all of the books in this series. Also on the 19th, we have Hall of Smoke by H.M. Long. We have a warrior princess who is essentially banished for disobeying her goddess's command. She must travel alone and atone for her weakness. And on this journey, she is basically striving to win back her goddess's approval. It sounds like this is going to be an adventure tale. It sounds like there is going to be a lot happening. I'm so excited. I haven't read as much fantasy in 2020 as I normally do, so I'm very excited to get back into the fantasy scene for 2021. And on the flip side of that, on the 26th, we have The X-Talk by Rachel Lynn Solomon. Now this is a contemporary, I guess you could say romance, but I feel like that term is being used very lightly these days. I would more so attribute this sounding more like a rom-com or chick lit or women's lit or whichever term you like to use for it. But essentially you have these two hosts of a podcast or a radio station, and they have to pretend that they used to date and have like this crazy witty banter, and then it turns out real feelings happen, so I'm excited for all of that. Now moving into February, on the 2nd we have Much Ado About You by Samantha Young. And we follow a character whose life sort of falls apart in Chicago. She's in her early 30s. She goes over to England, she finds a quaint little English bookshop that she ends up falling in love with, and also a guy who is there who obviously she's going to fall in love with. So I feel like this is the type of escapism that I need, and I am eager to read it. Also on February 2nd is the first book that I added to this list because it is the next installment of an ongoing series that I am obsessed with, and it's A Stranger in Town by Kelly Armstrong. And this is book 6, I believe, in the City of the Lost or the Rockton Thriller series. And I just love these books so much. I'm not going to spoil anything for this one or for the series. It is sort of based on the premise of the stat that enough people go missing in a year to basically populate a small village or a town. So she took that idea, Kelly Armstrong, and she ran with it, and this has basically a detective police officer character who ends up going to the Yukon to this town to help out a friend, and she ends up sticking around when there is a bunch of crime that happens, and it's so much fun. I love it. I don't find that the mystery is too out there, but I have so much fun with these books, and I can't wait for the next one. Next up on the 9th, we have A Lady's Formula for Love by Elizabeth Everett, and this is the first book in a historical fiction rom-com series. Honestly, I'm a sucker for those. You have a strong female scientist, you have her bodyguard who has to protect her, and romance ensues. And on the 16th, we have The Paris Dressmaker by Christy Cambrin. This book is just so on trend for me. Based on true accounts of how Parisians resisted the Nazi occupation in World War II, from fashion houses to the city streets, comes a story of two courageous women who risked everything to fight an evil they couldn't abide. And it's taking place in Paris 1939 as well as 1943, covers, from the looks of it, the two different women's perspectives and how they are going about basically fighting against the Nazis in their own way. And I love it. As we know from my favorite reads of 2020, and just in general, I read a lot of historical fiction and I love it so much, and this is based on true accounts. I can't get enough. In March, on the 6th, we have Float Plan by Trish Dollar. This is another contemporary rom-com situation, chick lit, women's lit. That genre really needs to be more specified. So since the loss of her fiancé, Anna has been shipwrecked by grief until a reminder goes off about a trip that they were supposed to take together. Impulsively, Anna goes to sea in their sailboat intending to complete the voyage alone. But after a treacherous night's sail, she realizes she can't do it by herself and hires Keen, a professional sailor, to help. Much like Anna, Keen is struggling with a very different future than the one he had planned. As romance rises with the tide, they discover that it's never too late to chart a new course. I just think that that's so sweet. I love two people being able to work through the junk that life has thrown at them and come together. Also, it takes place on a sailboat. I can't say I'm not a sucker for that. I love sailing. Also, on March 2nd, we have probably my most anticipated read of this year, and that is An Unexpected Peril by Deanna Raybourn. This is book 6 in the Veronica Speedwell mystery series that I became obsessed with in 2020. I binged all 5 of the books that are currently out in August, and I cannot gush about them enough. And this book is just, I can't wait to get my hands on it. I will definitely be pre-ordering it because I do not want to delay being able to read it. But again, I don't want to spoil too much because it is book 6 in a series, but it's basically a series that starts out based in 1887, and you have let me see if I can say this, leopardologist? Sorry, I butchered that. It's basically a butterfly specialist, and she is a historian, and she ends up being thrust into a situation that she had no idea that she was a part of, and just chaos ensues and a mystery ensues and a little bit of slow burn romance ensues. I love it so much. I can't wait to get my hands on this next installment. And on the 16th, we have Namesake by Adrienne Young. Now, Adrienne Young is known for Sky in the Deep, The Girl the Sea Gave Back, and most recently she came out with Fable. Namesake is the sequel to that book, basically following this girl who is abandoned essentially on a pirate island, and she has to get back to her family, and it's a seafaring adventure. It's great, and I can't wait for the second one. Moving on to April, we have on the 6th coming out To Love and to Loathe by Martha Waters. This is also the most recent book that I've added onto this list, and it is basically a widowed woman and a playboy guy coming together under a ruse, but true feelings potentially happen, and yeah, that's another thing I just can't get enough of. So it's a historical fiction romance kind of situation, and that is apparently just my continuing trend from 2020. On the 27th, we have Letters from Across the Sea by Genevieve Graham. And this one is said to be inspired by a little-known chapter of World War II history. A young Protestant girl and her Jewish neighbor are caught up in a terrible wave of hate sweeping the globe on the eve of war. So this is going to be a hard-hitting historical fiction. I can't wait for it. Genevieve Graham is a recent author that I've discovered in 2020, and I do want to continue reading her books as the years go on, and this is the next one that comes out, so I'm very excited. On the 29th, we have The Road Trip by Beth O'Leary, and I really don't need to know much about this because I love the way that Beth O'Leary is able to write 2 different characters and the way that they integrate into the story together. I feel like she has a lot of fun plot elements. She doesn't focus too much on the romance. It's more about the underlying plot that she really seems to focus on. So this one is Addie and her sister are about to embark on an epic road trip to a friend's wedding in the north of Scotland. The playlist is all planned and the snacks are packed. But not long after having set off, a car slams into the back of theirs. The driver is none other than Addie's ex, Dylan, who she's avoided since their traumatic breakup 2 years earlier. And basically they do have to share the car on this trip, and I just feel like uncomfortable situation and Old Flame, and I just feel like this is going to be such a fun ride. Moving into May, on the 11th, we have People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry, and this is the author of Beach Read, which came out in 2020. So when I found out naturally that she has another book coming out in 2021, I had to add that to my list. One thing that I did find about Beach Read is that it was sort of advertised as like this fluffy rom-com, but both of the main characters were dealing with some pretty heavy stuff, and the romance definitely took a back seat, but I loved the plot overall, so I am excited to get to her next book. Now this one, the tagline is, "With 1 week to win back the best friend she might just be in love with, a traveler writer plans the trip of a lifetime." And that's all I need to know. Traveling writer, trip of a lifetime, old flames, yes please. And on the 18th, we have another book that I recently added to this list, and that is The Lights of Prague by Nicole Jarvis. So this I didn't really need to know too much going into it, aside from the fact that it's based in Prague and it's fantasy, and that just has me so excited because my background, I am Czech, and I just want to find all of the Czech books that are apparently very hard to find. I have one that has been on my shelf for a little while, but other than that, it's been hard to find. So if you have any books that you know of that are set in Prague or the Czech Republic in general, please leave them in the comments down below because I would love to add them to my TBR. So we have a guy and a girl who is widowed, and they come together in this like ghostly story. Yes, that just sounds great to me. It sounds gothic, it sounds just lovely. And on August 17th, we have The Heart Principle by Helen Hoang. Now, Helen Hoang, she wrote The Kiss Quotient, which I read the year it came out. Absolutely adored it. I have not read The Bride Test, but I do have that on my list of want to reads. But I feel like her writing is so fun, and I really do love how she writes her characters with heart and with compassion and with some really good understanding, as far as I've been able to tell, of the issues that they do deal with. So I'm excited to see what she does with this one. On September 7th, we have Portrait of a Scotsman by Evie Dunmore. This is book 3 in the League of Extraordinary Women series. And this one follows Hattie's story, who we were introduced to in the first book, which was Bringing Down the Duke, and in the continuing series. Evie Dunmore does such a great job of balancing the actual hard-hitting subject of the suffragette movement and everything that women went through then, and I guess continue to go through, and the actual characters with so much heart and understanding and clearly done research, and I can't wait. I keep saying this about all of these books, but I really can't wait to read this one. I quickly fell in love with Bringing Down the Duke last year, and I've read it 3 or 4 times since, so clearly I am in love with this series and really want to read. I was going to say cannot wait again, but I can't. I can't wait for Portrait of a Scotsman. And lastly, on November 30th, we have Very Sincerely Yours by Carrie Winfrey. Now, Carrie Winfrey came out with the Waiting on Tom Hanks duology, and this sounds like the start of a new contemporary rom-com series for this year. Literally, the only thing that's written on Goodreads is a woman recovering from a broken heart vows to improve her life by doing one thing every day that scares her. And I absolutely love that. How can I not want to read this? Now, obviously there are going to be a ton of other books that are upcoming throughout the year that I'm going to be turned on to, so this is not by any means a compendium or a full list, but these are the ones that I've known about for a little while that I've been excited for and just need to get my hands on. So be sure to leave a comment down below if any of these books have hit your radar, and don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell icon so then that way you are notified for any time I post new videos. And until next time, keep reading.